Cicala, President and CEO of Project Assistance, and Jim Colton, Practice Director of Portfolio and Project Management. I'd like to introduce our first speaker now. Gus Cicala founded Project Assistance in 1996 to help companies achieve better, faster, more cost-effective project-based results. Gus is a recognized portfolio and project management expert who has published many popular articles and books on the subject and is frequently asked to present and teach topics of interest surrounding project management. Gus?
Thanks, Daniel, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Start with our agenda. First, we'll cover the challenges to leveraging the value of Microsoft Project briefly. We'll get acclimated, which really means talking about what the solution looks like from an overview standpoint. Talk about what's new in Microsoft Project 2013, and Jim will do a brief demonstration of the key features of Microsoft Project. We'll then talk a little bit about how we make this change effective, the challenges around planning these kinds of solution rollouts, the implementation challenges, the adoption challenges, and then the solution to those challenges, which would be the change methodology. We'll summarize and wrap up within the hour. So first, from a challenges standpoint, getting acclimated with Project 2013, the first thing I want to acknowledge is people coming to 2013 really come from two audiences. They come from those updating from earlier versions of Project, whether you're coming from 2003, 2007, 2010. If you're coming from 2010, you may only want to know what's new in 2013, and then there's those coming that are completely unfamiliar with Microsoft Project at all. So our presentation today will be geared towards both of those audiences. And then the other challenge is how do we get a solution to be an enabler instead of an obstacle? So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Microsoft Project certainly represents a fantastic way to enable a greater rigor of project management and portfolio management, and that's what we'll talk about as we go through the rest of these presentations today. So from a solution overview, and this is an overview, this is not intended to be necessarily as deep for an IT administrator necessarily, but we'll just talk about the big pieces here, and that's Project Server 2013 and SharePoint 2013. Certainly in the background is Windows Server and SharePoint and many of the supporting services and infrastructure that go with that. But primarily today what we're going to talk about is really the end user facing components. On the left hand side you see Project Pro for 2013 and the ability to publish back to the server and the ability to receive updates from the server. We see on the right-hand side of the diagram Project Web Access, both for the stakeholders getting views into Project Server and the SharePoint, as well as the team members, and in some cases the stakeholders sending updates back into the Project Server platform. So let's talk a minute about what's new in Microsoft Project. So the interface is new. You see a quick snapshot on the right there. And we'll talk about that a little bit in terms of what is new about the interface. The reporting engine, a vast upgrade on the Project Professional side. Jim will show you some of that today. Demand management, how projects get requested, some improvements there in terms of what you can do from the SharePoint client. Collaboration, specifically some changes to how timesheets operate. And Microsoft in the cloud. So there's the Project Online or the Office 365 version of this product available. There's differences in Project Web Access even outside of the cloud. And again, you can see on the right-hand side that Windows 8 metaphor, the tiles, the application tiles interface, the cleaner look. Timesheets themselves. So in the timesheets, which I don't think we're going to demonstrate today, but the team members will see a noticeable change in the timesheets. The user interface is different. For those of you coming from 2007, there's been a unification of the ability to unify task updates as well as timesheet updates. There's options available on the ribbon that have been split into multiple tabs with the most commonly used functions grouped on one tab to simplify the reporting process. You can add lines to a timesheet, and that's simpler now. You could do it before, but it's gotten simpler. The administrative lines are carried forward from one timesheet to the next, and there's several other changes in terms of statuses submitted by team members, in terms of how events can be added to the approvals process, how checks of timesheet totals occur, and historical timesheet data can be kept indefinitely. So that enables the organizers to maintain old timesheet records for compliance and other reasons without significantly affecting performance. And the ribbon, which is new as of 2010, and in 2013 is new on the Project Web app side. So at this point, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Jim Colton, who's going to do a demonstration of Microsoft Project. Jim, I will pass control to you, and I will pass the phone to you.
Thank you, Gus. Okay, welcome. Thank you for joining today. This afternoon, I'm going to share some of the key features in Microsoft Project 2013, as Gus mentioned earlier. Some of these are not new to 2013, but we want to show, the most significant features of the tool, some of which will be new to the folks migrating from 2010, and some of which you'll be seeing for the very first time. So one of the most significant benefits of 2013, if you choose the cloud option, is certainly the ability to access Microsoft Project Server from anywhere. All you need is an internet connection. You log in and you're good to go. So a major benefit not having to deal with firewall issues and accessing the system internally. I'm going to start by showing the Project Center in PWA. And this is a great perspective in terms of looking at the entire portfolio of projects or a subset of projects within the organization. These views that are created can be broken down to see the entire organization, all the projects in the portfolio, or you could create views to look at only a specific department, such as IT, human resources, finance, marketing, etc. The views are highly configurable. Right now I'm showing a summary view with a kind of a dashboard showing overall health, schedule health, budget health, and some of the key attributes of each of the projects. In PWA now, there's the ability to sort and filter, just like you can do on the Microsoft Project side. And Gus mentioned earlier, there's a ribbon that's very similar to what you see in Microsoft Project 2010. So right now I'm looking at a summary view of all the projects. I could come in and I could group these projects or filter them. So I can look at a subset of those projects that I'm specifically interested. Sorry, small technical issue there. We go back to the Project Center. So again, I could come in here and I could use a custom filter. So just show me the projects where the overall health is equal to green. Or let's say yellow. We're only concerned about the ones that are challenging us. And Project Web App will quickly show the projects that have the overall health in yellow. So you can imagine if you're in an executive briefing and you only want to share a subset of the projects that are being challenged and talk through those, this is a nice feature to have. What's new in Project 2013 is this timeline view running up top. So I can quickly select a project and add it to a timeline view. And by doing that, you can look at a subset of projects across the organization and show them in a timeline. I can quickly remove from the timeline and customize this I can customize the font and the colors and all that. So it's a pretty user-friendly feature. And I can also cut and paste this into a Word document or PowerPoint for presentation purposes. The next major function within the system I'm going to share is really a project selection process. It's called strategy here, and it starts by identification of your business drivers. So this is a method to look at your entire portfolio, prioritize your initiatives based on business value, and then constrain your project selection based on, in this case, we'll show a constraint around budget. So the first step in the process is to identify your business drivers. I'm going to drill down into expanding into new markets. And essentially, you're going to score each of the projects from a kind of a none to an extreme. Is this thing very important or not so important in terms of the specific business objective? And you'll go through a similar process with each of your drivers. And this could be, again, departmentally or could be organizational based. You may decide that you want to prioritize your projects in a different way at the department level versus the organization level. Once I have the driver library set up, I can actually select a portfolio. So in this case, I'm going to look at one that's already been assessed. And using a technique called pairwise comparisons, you can look at all the business drivers and determine if one is more important than another. And by going through the process for all the drivers, you essentially build out the drivers that are most important versus those that are less important. So this technique will allow you to weight your priorities and your business drivers. Once I go through that step, I know what my business drivers are. I know what's most important to the organization or department. I can then look at a specific portfolio of projects. So I've selected 24 projects that are potential initiatives, say, for next year, 2014. Now, typically you get a wish list from the department heads, and we know that we have to constrain this wish list based on budget. So I've individually scored each of these initiatives, and you can see the actual business value that each project will bring to the organization in terms of percentage here, looking at the priority column. So I've essentially got a stack ranking of initiatives from high to low. I also know the total cost for that initiative. So initially I have 24 projects at a $19+ million spend. Now, as typically is the case, I don't have the budget to spend that these projects are costing in total. So I need to constrain my selection. So what I can do is I can apply a constraint, such as a budget constraint. In this case, I'm going to constrain the project now, portfolio budget, to $16 million. And what you'll see now is I have 19 projects selected versus the 24. And you can see which projects got kind of pushed out of the portfolio. And this selection was done automatically based on a combination of the priority of the project and the total cost of the project. So the system calculated that automatically with an algorithm. And as you can see, I could do various what-if analysis using the portfolio selection feature. So I have 19 projects. The original was 24. I'm still getting 92% of my overall business value a return to the company. So let's say I don't have 16. I only really have 14. Let's further constrain the portfolio budget. Let the system do its work. I now have 17 projects selected, and 7 projects got forced out of the portfolio. You can see those at the bottom. So what I can do is I can save these different what-if analyses and then look at them in aggregate and do some comparison. And I can see where I've gone from the baseline to an $18 million constraint, a $16 million constraint, and a $14 million constraint. This is a very powerful tool to provide senior executives with decision criteria in order to make good decisions about the portfolio and annual budgets. Next up, I'm going to go back to a project workflow, which is easy to set up and allows you to track a project throughout its various life cycle phases. So I'm back in the project center. I'm looking at selecting a specific project, and I'm going to open that and see some of the details of that project. What workflow allows you to do is basically break the project down into stages. You can see workflow phase or stage 1 through 5. And it's, a typical life cycle. You can configure this to meet your organizational requirements. But also what it allows you to do is define specific deliverables that are required in each phase or stage. For example, I want to capture project details in the initial create stage of the project. Things such as total benefits, total cost. You could have return on investment, as you see here. Who's the project owner, what department this belongs to. And again, this is totally configurable. You can assign custom attributes to each project and complete the information to meet your company's requirements. Also within the workflow, during that create stage, I'm going to conduct that strategic impact, basically scoring the project against those business drivers. So you can kind of see that scorecard here is built right into the workflow. I can also see details of the project schedule in PWA. So there's a lot more functionality around scheduling in PWA than we saw in previous versions of the tool. And it's pretty much got the look and feel of Project Professional to ease the transition to doing work in PWA. The next major function I'm going to share is around resource management. So I'm going to click on the Resource Center, and you can see a list of resources and generic resources running down the left-hand side here. Now, if you can imagine, picture yourself as a resource manager, and I need to know kind of the supply and demand of my resources. So what I can do is I can go into the team name, and I'm going to filter. For example, I'm the team lead for the business analyst group. I'm going to go in and filter on business analyst. I'm going to select the analyst, and then I'm going to check resource availability for those individuals and as a team. So essentially, for a given time frame, which I can select, it'll show me both the demand of those resources and the availability. So the black bar up here is the capacity, and the color bars at the bottom are the availability. And I can also show a different view that shows remaining availability. So that's as the team as a whole. I could then just choose a subset of the team or an individual just by checking or unchecking the boxes here. Additionally, I could change the parameters of the time frame. Let's say I want to look out several months into the future. So I'll just go out till, let's say, 12/31. Now I want to look at it by months instead of weeks. I want to, kind of a longer-term view. I apply the filter or the query, and now I'm looking at availability throughout the rest of the year for the business analyst team. Another powerful feature here is I can see the details. For each individual, I can see which projects they're assigned to. So as opposed to a standalone version where I'm only looking at my own project, I can now get an aggregate view of all projects across the organization for each resource. A very powerful function. I now also, as a resource manager, I know who to go talk to if there's a conflict where demand is exceeding supply for a resource or a group of resources. I know exactly what the individual is working on and when. Next up, I'm going to go to the project team sites. Again, I'm going to select a project, just double click on it, and I'll have the option of going to a project team site. Essentially, this is built on the SharePoint platform, and it's going to look and feel a lot like SharePoint. So there's some great functionality here in terms of collaboration tools for project teams. So each individual in the project team can have access to this site. I can build a project calendar with key project events. I can develop project issues. Let me select a project where I actually have a little more data here. Content filtering projects just getting off the ground. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to remove my filter from Project Center. I'm going to see all the projects. And I'm interested in MapCom. So again, I double click on that. I go to the project team site. So if you're familiar with working in SharePoint, this is going to work just like SharePoint because it is SharePoint. If you're familiar with adding documents, if you're familiar with creating project lists or drop-down lists, it's all going to work exactly the same. So you can see the list of issues. All team members will have access to this, and if the individuals assign ownership of the issue, they'll also see that in their homepage in PWA. Again, I'll show you the project calendar. It's easy to add a new event. Everyone has access to it and availability to see the information. There's out-of-the-box issues and risk templates. So if I want to add a new risk, or in this case, a new issue, very straightforward. And something that you're probably familiar with if you use a risk log today, but now we've built this right into SharePoint, and it's automated, and we can share the information quickly across the teams. These fields are configurable, but out of the box you get a good solid issue template and risk template. Again, once I add the issue or risk here on the team site, that's going to be visible to each individual on their home site back in PWA. There's a document folder, so you could put a folder structure in here based on your project phases and store all the project documentation for easy access. I can quickly migrate back to PWA, to Project Center, from the project team sites. Now I'm going to show you one of the most exciting new features in Project 2013. So I'm going to go to a specific project, in this case, this dynamic CRM project, and I'm going to open it up, this time in Project Professional for editing. So this is opening up the project in Professional. For those that aren't familiar with PWA, the updates and edits I make in Project Professional get saved and published. Once they're published, they're available to everyone that has access to that project information. So I can work offline and use the save button if I have like kind of a work in progress project plan. So I'm doing updates throughout the week. I don't want to publish those yet, but say on Friday morning I want to publish that information. and share that with the team, I just hit the publish button. So what I'm going to show you in Microsoft Project is, again, I think the most exciting new feature in the tool, and it's really about automated reporting here. So I'm going to click on Report, and I'm going to share a project overview dashboard. So great graphics, high-level information in this thing. Again, these reports are very, very configurable. Click on a graph, and it's basically an Excel pivot table. And I can customize this graph extremely quickly using the pivot table functionality. I can also want to report out in a status report. I can copy this report. I can go into Word, and if all goes well, I will paste this into Microsoft Word, and I got a great-looking project overview report in a matter of seconds. So for those of you that do a lot of manual piecing together status reports, I think you're going to find this feature very efficient. Project overview report. So it's, again, it's % complete here. This is just an example. You can see the key milestones, expected finish dates, and then some of the tasks that are late. This is out of the box. Again, this is highly configurable and easy to do. Other reports that I think are really excellent, there's a cost overview report showing total project cost, remaining cost, % complete. You can look at some details in terms of how you're doing against baselines, and you can see a breakdown by phase of the actual cost and remaining. So very good looking report structure, right out of the box, highly configurable. Other nice reports, I'll come in and look at resources. We saw this in PWA, and now there's capabilities within Project Professional to see some similar information. So I'm going to go in here, hit Resource Overview. I can see actual remaining and baseline work for each individual on the team. I can see % work complete for those individuals. And I can see kind of remaining work in a table down at the bottom here. Again, I can select the graph, and I can basically use a pivot table and change the data, customize it based on my company's needs and requirements. I can go in here, I can play with the fonts. I can make this real pretty, change it to my company colors, etc. So a lot of great things in terms of reporting. There's an earned value report in here. I go into report cost, earned value report, and you get some burn down charts showing actual cost of work completed, budgeted cost of work completed, etc. Right out of the box, great burn down charts. I'm going to show the total cost overview. Breaks out, here's a cost distribution in terms of a pie chart. Work completed, future work, stuff that was late. Again, I can see the cost this time by project phase. I can see variances against baseline, etc. Finally, I can look at an in progress report here. So this is a very nice milestone report. Simple, but great information. So which milestones were late, which ones are coming up in the next time period, which ones have I completed. Simple, straightforward, succinct, and great looking report. I can cut and paste right into Word, PowerPoint, or Excel. So that's what I have for today, Gus.
Thanks, Jim. I'm excited.
Back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So we'll talk just a little bit about some of the challenges and follow-up. Based on our experience, we've been using Project and installing it for our customers since Project 3, which was about 20 years ago. And what I want to talk about here for the moment is some of the follow-up challenges we see, both on the planning side as well as how we really affect the change. I mean, we talk a lot about excuse me, projects are really about achieving a mission of a company, right? There's a vision out there, and that vision is usually embodied in a strategy in terms of how you get to that vision, and it's the projects that get us there, right? So at the end of the day, making technology an enabler is really a lot more than getting this tool, right? I mean, Microsoft has provided, this next release that's even more robust and more feature-rich, but really what we want to think about is the challenges in not only implementing the solution, but prior to the implementation, how we plan it, and after the implementation, how we get it adopted. And some of the planning challenges we see out there is what I call the project, right? Putting a tool like Microsoft Project Server in is a project. It needs to be treated that way. It needs to be scoped properly. It needs to have the right budget. It needs to have the right stakeholders. It needs to have the right cost-benefit analysis, and ultimately needs to have the right executive support to make the change stick. So, this whole idea of, is there a plan for the adoption? The thing I think of is we get questions all the time about the ROI. Can you demonstrate the ROI of Microsoft Project? Can you demonstrate the ROI of project management? And what I've seen that really works the best is an executive team that understands that the promise of effective project management is better, faster, cheaper. And if there's not a belief with the executives in the organization, it's nothing but an uphill climb, because these things, we'll talk about the timing, about how long this takes, but ultimately to really affect the true change is measured in quarters or years. Project can certainly enable that, but the executive support has to be there for the long term. So that really begs the question: is the organization ready? And we walk into a lot of dysfunction when we go into organizations, and certainly Microsoft Project can help provide a pathway to tame some of that dysfunction. But there's also a question about the organizational readiness, and is there a belief that the view is worth the climb, right? So there is going to be a climb, and as a matter of fact, when we think about that, I think about the amount of effort that goes into getting through that, what I call no man's land, right? There's that period of time in which the technology is new. Oftentimes there's an increased level of rigor in the organization, and it can be challenging really to get through that climb. And so the other question that begs is the organization structured to enable effective portfolio and project management? Some organizations have a sort of a natural inclination towards supporting projects, and some don't. Is there a PMO? Is there support for the idea of a project manager role in the organization, in the business that's funding the projects? Is there a belief that this investment is worth it, that planning is worth it, that the promise of project management is in fact better, faster, cheaper, but it comes at a price, right? So there's an ROI question involved in here, and part of that ROI, I mean, really, part of the I is, when I say the I mean the investment, is this question of, this isn't just about buying software, buying hardware, buying services from a partner like Project Assistance to help you do this. It's the question of how about the increased rigor that happens when we start looking at what it takes. There's a methodology framework. There's new processes oftentimes that have to go with this. So it would be very, very uncommon. I can think of very few examples where a customer came to us and said, we want Project Server to come in to mimic exactly what we're doing today. Almost always there's this question of, if we're going to put the technology in, what can we do better? How can we increase our project management practice? How can we take on greater challenges and greater returns in those challenges? And that becomes really a question of, is there a process and a methodology framework that this technology can align to? And if not, is the organization ready to build that? Is the organization ready to add on to what it has today to really enable that effective increase in rigor? Okay, of course, when we talk about specifically about Microsoft Project, there's a new angle here from a total cost of ownership standpoint. Can the organization foot the bill up front? Is there a desire to spread out the expense over time? Is there a strategy within the organization to think about maybe going off premises? Is that something that the organization is leaning towards doing? Is there a SaaS model, a software as a service mentality? what about the core competencies in your organization? We get hired oftentimes because even in a large IT organization, the specific skills to implement and support Microsoft Project Server from an infrastructure standpoint sometimes aren't present, and sometimes have to be brought in from the outside. And sometimes when they're brought in from the outside, they may not be as effective as we hope they would be. So there's a really a good question about, do you want the investment in on-premise hardware and software and the ongoing total cost of ownership, or is there a desire to take it elsewhere? I talked about this in the beginning, and Jim did a good job of going over this. Sort of the overall Microsoft project solution. Are you coming from, a 2010 or a 2007 environment? Are you coming from an older environment? Are you coming from one of the competing PPM solutions that are out there? So in there, there's this question of, what's new, and based on what's new, do I need what's new? Is there a benefit to that? Certainly, there's a benefit to getting sort of the hidden things that are out there. It's a new release, and it's got better integration with SharePoint and some of those things that are you're just going to get by buying a new product. You'll get longer-term support, and if you're thinking about going to project and you're not on project, certainly there's a good reason to go with Project 2013. So yeah, what are the advantages? Well, what are we trying to do? What is that increased level of rigor? Do we know where we're trying to get to in terms of a greater level of rigor? And so are there advantages to doing that, and are we willing to take on some of those challenges from a growing pain standpoint? Again, it goes back to some of those other challenges with the executive support and the enabling methodology and processes. So from a technology standpoint, specific to project, conversion from the current platform, certainly there's some things in the background. We got a question today on the console when Jim was presenting about, what version of SharePoint do I need? What about SQL? Some of those questions certainly need to be answered. The lack of in-house expertise, do you need to go to a support model with maybe some of the things we can do, for example, on a retainer? Is the rollout big enough to support a new FTE internally to support some of those needs? Project management bandwidth, right? So that investment in project management in increased rigor comes with some increased time commitment from the project manager. So putting this technology in can be, Jim showed many of the benefits you can have in terms of knowing where your capacity is versus your demand in your projects, but certainly that comes from the question of, are the project managers ready for that? Process improvements to support the technology, and that's both within IT as well as the project management infrastructure, and the ability to demonstrate ROI for the infrastructure investment. So certainly we can help you do some of that, and we're available for that. The adoption challenges, this is a big one. A lot of organizations think it's done when the technology's been installed, and we see a lot of what I call memo from Bob, where Bob may be the CIO or the head of the PMO or somebody in a role that leads the project managers, and it's, okay, you've had the training, we've stood up Project Server, you got the methodology handbook, go forth and multiply, right? So this adoption thing, this change management thing, is a formal process, and we really like to talk about that a lot, right? So it really, at the end of the day, is, are we going to get the return on the investment? Are we going to get the improvement of the track record with the project? So, governance has an ROI, but it's a process, right? So are we spending the money right? Is there a return on investment to the governance that says we have to oversee project managers? There's an effort involved that's not your traditional portfolio management in terms of just saying, are the projects delivering on time, on budget, on spec, but are the project managers, in fact, following a process? Are they in control? Are they using the control processes that are prescribed in successful project execution? And that boils down to the change management. How do you drive cultural change? Is the change really being driven from senior management? Is there a not optional aspect of this? I like to kid around with these this three-letter acronym, CJS, which is the criminal justice system, or I sometimes discuss sentencing guidelines or audits. But I mean, really, at the end of the day, is there teeth in the process? Is it not just a project management process, but is it accompanied by a sidecar set of governance processes that really drive the change that says we're going to help the projects, we're going to insert ourselves at the point of execution from a support standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint to really help the project managers get this thing adopted. And so it really comes down to, this cliche that, what gets measured gets managed, right? So if we're in there measuring the performance of the projects and measuring the performance of the project managers, we'll get this thing adopted. So it's proper oversight, not from the project managers, but from the managers of the project managers. I'm always a little bit suspect when an organization calls and says our project managers are failing, and I think about this, when the kids burn down the house, that somehow the parents aren't held responsible. So, there's this question of, how do we do the escalation and intervention? How does management ensure that if projects are going to fail, that they're going to fail faster, right? If we're sending good money after bad, do we have a formal review and cancellation process? Do we, in fact, from a portfolio management standpoint, take that money that's going to be wasted on a project that will ultimately fail and send it to another place? Because, project managers go through the 5 stages of grief. If they find out their project is terminal, they go right into the first stage, which is denial. So how can we, from an organizational standpoint, get us to that point of failing faster? And from a change management methodology, certainly our recommendation is that there be this thing called envisioning step, where we look at these aspects of process and how the technology aligns to the process, and how the people in organization, especially the project managers, are ready to increase the rigor, and is there that oversight with governance? So do we understand our current state and our future state, how wide that gap may be, and do we really have a sense of what our vision is to close that gap, and what I call the project? Is there a specific detailed roadmap that can get us to the end point and deliver on the promise? And really, what that culminates in is a look at where we are today, where we're trying to get to, and specifically what that roadmap is to close the gap. So we have a proprietary methodology. It uses a lot of the OPM3 concepts. If you're familiar with the PMI's organizational project management maturity model, we've taken that. We've added some additional dimensions to it. We can talk to you more about that if there's interest. Certainly implementation takes a look at all those things, but now we're building, right? So this idea of what are the requirements for process technology? What is the alignment between that process and technology? How do you get their software installed and configured? Or if you're going off-premise in the Microsoft Cloud, how do you just do the configuration? Customization oftentimes is very important when we have an enterprise install. So, how about the education, the training, and support? And ultimately what we get here is an implemented solution with governance procedures. And the procedures have to be baked into the rollout, right? We roll out the solution and the governance, so that adoption, again, has a set of activities that look like what I mentioned previously around process improvement, ongoing operations, the measuring and reporting, and ultimately driving towards an adopted solution. So in terms of next steps, what I want to talk about briefly here is some of the, we talked about, I'm sorry, in summary, not in next steps, there's changes in Microsoft Project 2013. For those of you who are new to even 2010 or 2007, hopefully you saw some of that as well. For those of you who are hoping to see just what's new in 2013, thanks for bearing with us for some of our other audience members today. So we've got the cloud, we've got the improved reporting of Project Professional, the timeline view is now available in PWA, certainly the improved look and feel, the Office 365 look, the SharePoint look, the Office 2013 look, all those things are inherent and well integrated with the rest of the Microsoft platform, and not only in the front end, but as well as the improvements on the back end. So the other point of summary would be, to leverage what we call VIA, right? VIA in terms of the roadway you're traveling down to get there. You need a successful methodology that can really drive that. And so, in our next couple of minutes here, I just want to talk about a couple of next steps and a couple of offers we'll make here today. In terms of our value prop, we help our customers really deliver on that promise of better, faster, cheaper, right? So our mission is to really deliver solutions that enable better, faster, cheaper in project-based organizations, really by helping reduce your risk, because we've done this before. We've got the bandwidth and the know-how, maximizing the ROI, and that's been done in increments. So there's a method to the madness, if you will, to how you get this return in increments, which really speeds the realization of value, and what I call creating a mood towards continued investment. These things have to happen in multiple phases. And if you can't show some value early, it's not going to happen, and ultimately the driving of the effective organizational change. Okay, so in terms of our new website, I'll just spend a minute here, and what you'll see here is on our solutions page, you can see our project server deployment offering, for example. So if you drop down into the solution, you'll see this is embarrassing, isn't it? Yes, it is. The assessment, training, staffing, methodology, assembly tool. We have a new training guide for Project 2013. We do application development, SharePoint services, portfolio and project management consulting. We've got a GSA schedule if anybody's in the government, and certainly we're a cloud partner. We've been around this solution for 17 years. So they're the things you can do. In terms of the videos, if you're interested in any of our past webinars, they're all out here. So you can go out there and look at them. There's a lot of topics of interest. We have many thousands of hits on these things already. And so if you're interested in that, please take advantage of it. The other thing I'll mention in terms of latest things, we've got a new leadership workshop. Any of you who have been out to some of the PMI presentations, this leadership is taken and not given, very well received, and supported by a one-day workshop. Our project management using Project 2013, nearly 500 pages of project management theory, as well as alignment to Microsoft Project. And it's a training guide, and it's the only thing like it on the market. And it comes with a set of theory and technology. It comes with exercises. It's available in our store. It's available on Amazon. And we invite you to do that. In terms of the one-day workshop for leadership, there's some information on that. Let us know if you're interested. And very, very well received. The book itself, there's a picture of it. If you go on Amazon and Google Microsoft Project 2013 training, you'll see us come up first in the list. If you're interested for some follow-up, we can schedule a no-obligation exploratory meeting. We'll provide a free copy of the project management using Microsoft Project 2013. If you want the webinar slide deck, we can send that to you. Jan's contact information is there, jgoodman@projectassistance.com. There'll be a link to the webinar itself. If you want to share this with somebody else, there'll be a video. And at this point, we have about 5 or 6 minutes left, and we have opened the question and answer console. And I think we've had some questions coming in during the presentation that were for general consumption. If you all have questions, I'll remind you that there's a question and answer console on your GoToMeeting. And I will turn it over to Dan, back to our moderator, to see if we've had any questions.
All right, thanks, Gus, and thanks, Jim, as well. We do have a couple of questions come in. You actually breezed over this one, but just for a quick answer, if you use Project Server 2013, do you, in fact, need to have SharePoint 2013?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So, and for the lady who asked that question, you should have received a TechNet article link as well.
Excellent. And another question we had come in was, what are the pros and cons of on-premise versus hosted?
Yeah, and I guess there's just a couple of thoughts, right? I did touch on this briefly, but certainly there's a money aspect of this. So, if there's an inclination to want to make the investment up front and to not spread it out over time, having it on premises may provide that to you. Alignment with the organizational strategy is one of the pros and cons. In other words, if there's we've had calls from clients in the past prior to 2013 saying we've been told we have to go with off-premise solutions. Does Microsoft provide that? And the fact that this thing is actually hosted by Microsoft is a pro as well. So you've got the full weight of the Microsoft organization behind this. But certainly in both cases, the configuration is important. Having a knowledge about where you want to go is important as well. So hopefully that answers your general questions. If there's a deeper question for the person that asked that, please contact us and we'll have to set up a follow-up call.
All right.
Any other questions?
Yes, we have one more, and we're still open to more if you'd like to send them in. How long does it take from the planning visioning stage to get to a fully implemented solution?
Planning and visioning to fully implemented. So that really asks, in my mind, that's really asking the question about, I guess, what we have here on slide 16, right? So if you say, what does it mean to do the vision and implement, we can get you to, I'll just bring up the slide real fast. For some reason, my console is not accepting my slide number. So here we go. So the vision and implement, that's typically about a quarter. Now, a smaller organization may go faster, a larger organization may go slower, but in terms of the time required to really set it up properly in the vision, and what the roadmap really contains is a set of what I would call configuration requirements. So it really scopes those requirements quite well. So when we get to the implement, when we get to requirements management for the configuration, we're not working with a blank sheet of paper. So that has a tendency to actually accelerate the ability to implement. There's a pretty clear set of what the stakeholders want. We really start with the output. If you ask me what your output is from your system, I can tell you what the inputs have to be. And if I can tell you what the inputs have to be, I can tell you what processes you're going to need to get them. Right? So a quick example. If somebody says we want our outputs to show us capacity versus demand at a named resource level, I can tell you your assignments are going to have that data. Right? If you tell me you're going to need it on a weekly scale or a daily scale, or you're going to need to know what specific tasks people are having conflict with because we want to be able to resolve at that level, I can tell you what the inputs are, and I can even tell you what level of process detail is going to happen. In terms of the third stage, the adoption stage, that happens over a period of time. Usually the benefit can be seen within 2 quarters from vision, implement, and adopt, but certainly the long-term return on that happens over quarters and years, and it usually comes in several waves of adoption. Are there any other questions?
That's all the questions we've received at this time, so thank you everyone for joining us.
Okay, thanks Daniel. Thank you everybody for joining. Jim, thank you very much.
And remember that the recording will be posted up on the events page as well as the video page, and we also have our own YouTube channel. But if you'd like to contact us to get the slide deck, just send us an email. Thanks, everyone.